Hello, good evening everyone. I'm Yaakov Horowitz, and tonight's talk is titled, Would Your Kids Tell You? And we're going to be having an honest and frank discussion about creating the environment. Here's the big idea. The big idea is, what can you do to create an environment that your children can talk to you about anything? Okay, that's really what it's all about. Now, it so happens that we're talking about child abuse prevention, but it's really for all aspects of parenting. The notion that we try to get our children comfortable with having discussions with us, with seeking our guidance, doesn't only have to do with child abuse prevention. It's really for everything. And if you think about it, we're training our children to seek our guidance as parents when they need it most. The children need us most to guide them when they're getting in trouble, when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. So, therefore, the big idea is to train your children to be able to have these discussions with you. Now, the obvious question is, why would a kid talk to his parents? You know, it would almost be counterintuitive that a child would actually confide in his parents, his or her parents, and have discussions with them about things, misdeeds that they're doing, or things that they're not really comfortable talking about. Yet we know that it does work. Now, we've been doing at Bright Beginnings. This is my personal page. There's a Bright Beginnings page that has parenting clips. We've been working on, since June, we've been talking under a minute parenting clip every day, 6 days a week, and we do different topics. And we've really been building to this. It so happens that we're just talking about it right now. We're starting to do adolescence on Sunday, and we were building towards this stage. And the big idea is, do you want to supervise your children, or do you want to mentor them? And there's an extraordinarily big difference between them. Supervise is what most of us do as parents. To mentor a child, think of what a mentor does. A mentor is someone that the child or an adult goes to for guidance, to talk things over with. So if I think it's very important that parents set values for your home. What do you want your home to stand for? What do you want your children to take away from your home as the culture? And we spent some time, I've been talking about this for about 15 years already, in parenting classes, that I encourage parents to take time to think about what it is, what would you like your goals to be. Let me give you a simple example, not directly related to this, okay? Not directly related, certainly not to child abuse, but not even to the notion of speaking to your parents, okay? So let's say you say, for example, let's say you set a goal as parents, and you say, we would like our home to be the type of house where the kids are comfortable hanging out in, okay? That's a goal. I'm not telling you that should be your goal. I think it's a very, very worthwhile goal. But let's say that that's a goal that you're thinking about. We would love to have the type of home that kids hang out in. Why? So the experts in this space, the experts in change and planning, say that it should be a 3-step process. I'm going to go through it very briefly. Maybe I'll do another live on some of these ancillary topics that I'm just going over very quickly. But the notion is, let's say you say that I'm setting a goal, so you should say what the goal is, and they say that you should say it in a verb form, not that I would like to, but I'm going to. So our home will be the type of home that children enjoy hanging out in. State why it's important to you. Why is that important? State the reason. Why? Because we'll be able to see who our children's friends are. We want our children to always be comfortable being in their own home, because we don't want them roaming the streets when they become teenagers. We want them to purposely to stay here. Okay, we want to, could give a whole host of reasons why it's helpful. Therefore, we will. So, what are you going to do about it? Okay, you have a goal. You say why it's important. Now, what are you going to do? And you say, it's interesting because I always tell parents that every goal is going to cost you something. If you have a goal and it's a worthwhile goal, it ain't free. It's not going to come cheaply, right? You're going to have to really work and do. So, for example, in this example that I gave about having a home where you want your kids to hang out in, if you really do want your kids to hang out in, boy, is it going to cost you. And just start listing them. It's going to cost you money because you're going to have to buy all sorts of games and toys and things that kids like to play. You're going to have to see there's a lot of food and nosh there. It's going to cost you privacy. It's going to cost you privacy. It's going to cost you serenity, right? Your home, if your children are going to hang out there, their friends are going to be there. If their friends are going to be there, they're going to be there your house is going to be a lot less quiet than the other way. I think it's a worthwhile goal. I think parents should discuss among themselves if that's a goal for you. So that's the process. This is what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. And therefore, here's some action steps that we're going to take. Steps we're going to take to make sure it happens. So let's apply it to this goal that we're talking about tonight. I want our children to be able to talk to us about anything. Why? Because we're really going to be able to guide them. Therefore, we will. Now comes the hard part. So this is a process. It doesn't just come by itself. It's not something that you could say, yeah, sure, talk to your kids and say, kids, you can talk to us about anything. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. But I believe it's doable. I think, honestly, it's one of the nicest things that kids can tell you on the way out of their home, out of your home, in other words, when they leave to go to Eretz Yisrael and get married in Mitzvah Shem. I think it's one of the nicest things that kids can tell parents. I was able to talk to you about anything. But like I said, it's not cheap. It doesn't come inexpensively. That means you need to study parenting. You need to be available. You need to have an extraordinary amount of patience. Because things get very complicated. There are barriers. We're going to talk about those barriers, and that really will be the cost. In a few minutes, I'm just going to cut to the chase and start talking about why kids would not talk to their parents. And then you can automatically understand, how that would work. So again, if you're going to guide your children, if you're going to have an effective child safety program, if you're going to have your children be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations with you, it's almost a prerequisite. It's almost the whole child safety education is predicated on the fact that children can talk to their parents about anything. And that is a very unpleasant conversation, as I mentioned earlier today in a live we did earlier. It's a very unpleasant thing for children to tell their parents that somebody's being inappropriate with them. It's really, really uncomfortable. So we set a goal. If that's a goal and you think about it and something that you want, then hopefully you can get it. And throughout the year, in these parenting clubs, since June, we've been going over short-term parenting versus long-term parenting, giving consequences instead of punishments, effective discipline techniques. We studied Rav Shlomo Wolbe's Zatzal, Rav Wolbe's Zriya, Binyan, planting and building. There's so much. Again, it's on the Bright Beginnings page. I really encourage you, if you're interested in this, go back and start from the beginning and look over some of those clips. It's only a minute a day. It won't take you that much time. But this is the way it works. Hopefully you get to that stage. You get to the place where your children can talk to you. So what are the barriers? And I propose to you that if you want your children to have that relationship with you, you're going to have to overcome every single one of those barriers. Because, in baseball, if you're hitting 1 out of 3, you get a multi-million-dollar contract. You're batting .333, right? Here, you really need, if we don't remove all the barriers, the children just won't talk to us. So what are the barriers? Think of it honestly. Why would a child not want to speak to the parents? So you can type it in as a message if you'd like, or I'll just go ahead. So children won't talk to their parent, well, less likely to talk to their parents. Again, talking to them not about, certificates that they won in school. We're talking about telling them when they have difficulty or issues. They're embarrassed, right? They're embarrassed. It's natural that they're not going to want to talk to you about something like that. They're afraid of a punishment. They don't want to disappoint you. I'm just listing a few right off the bat. They think you don't get it. Maybe they think, I've heard this so many times from kids that they say, like, my parents are so nice. One of the kids says, my mother, I still remember one of the kids telling me, one of the adolescents I was dealing with years and years ago, he said, my mother's this really, he said to the patient, my mother's this really nice lady. When she hears that I'm doing something that she doesn't like, she goes, and she takes out a Tillim, a prayer book to start praying for his soul. So they think that you don't get it. And why should I talk to you about it? You're just going to get upset, and there's nothing you can do, to help me. Afraid of not being believed is, one of the parents just wrote, it's a culture of not talking, right? We have to get our children into the habit of having open conversations. And confidentiality is another one, right? If I tell you that my friends and I were doing something wrong, are you going to tell the principal? Are you going to tell your friends? My friends are going to find out about it, and they're never going to talk to me again. So, look, every one of these issues is legitimate. Every single one of those issues is legitimate. And again, if you remove all the barriers, and let's say they're worried about their confidentiality, in all likelihood, you're going to have a hard time getting them to speak, to really talk to you. So think of those barriers and what you could do to remove them. It's really as simple and as complicated as that. So if you do want to have open dialogue with your children, if you do want to have this relationship where children can actually talk to you about things that's going on in their lives, then that's a rich relationship. I'll never forget when I first started Project Yes almost 25 years ago, more. A father called me. A guy lived in Brooklyn. He sounded like a Talmud Chacham, a real Torah scholar on the phone. He was clearly, bright, articulate. And he told me that his son, he said his son is 17 years old. He's a top kid in yeshiva. He's a great learner, very enjoys learning Gemara, Talmud. He's respectful, every teacher's dream. As the father told me this, he's a great, great kid. But he came home and he told his father, who's a very religious, Haredi fellow, and the kid told his father, he says, I really don't believe what they're teaching me in yeshiva. This is what he told the father. Called me that his son told him that he doesn't believe what they're teaching him in yeshiva. Meaning they're teaching him that there was Kriyas Yamsuf, right? That Moshe split the sea, and that the Torah was given from Hashem. All those things that we believe as part of our tradition, as part of our Messiah. He said, I don't believe all of that stuff. And he tells his father, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not becoming non-religious. I just don't believe everything they're telling me. So I told the father, I said, this is a little above my pay grade. I was just starting to deal with it in this space. I said, I'd like to talk it over with someone. But I said, here's the message to you. What happened with the kid, I'll tell you, but that's not the main point. Is this. I told the father, I said, before I hang up, I want to tell you that you're an amazing father. I don't know who you are, but the fact that your child was comfortable having this discussion with you meant that he expected to be treated the way you're treating it, seriously, without yelling at him, without letting him know how he's disappointing you. And of course it was disappointing to his father, and of course the kid knew that he was really shaking his father's tree by telling him this, but he was comfortable enough talking to him. It so happens that I asked Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita, who was our Pesach, our rabbinic advisor, I asked him this question, how should the father respond? And he actually said, I did not expect this at all. He said that we say in davening Friday night, at Davening and Tehillim, in Psalms it says, Yimesh Neseinu Behem Shivim Shana, that our sojourn, our journey in this world is 70, 80 years. Okay, so Reb Shmuel said, what's the message there? So he said fascinating. He said that we're here in this world, we don't see Hashem, we don't see God. We communicate, as they say, as the Chachamim, the rabbis, our sages would say that we can have an active dialogue with God even if we can't see Him. How? Because when we read the Torah that God gave us, God is speaking to us. And when we pray, when we daven, we're speaking to Him. So we can have a vibrant relationship, but we just don't see Hashem. So 70 years, we have the course of our lifetime to explore the truth and to get closer to God, to lead a spiritual life and to become closer to Hashem. That's what Rabbi Kamenetsky told me, Shmuel. So he said, the father should tell his son that you have 53 years to go. That was a quote. He said, the father should tell his son, I'm glad you were comfortable asking me this question. It's a journey. Let's talk about it. He gave some practical advice that, the average Rebbe in yeshiva perhaps isn't familiar with having these types of discussions, maybe to go to people who are in outreach. He gave some very practical advice, but basically his message to the child was, I'm glad that he encouraged the father to say, I'm glad you told me, and it's a journey, let's talk about it, instead of just, but think of what percentage of kids would be comfortable telling the parent that, knowing that the parent would be devastated? That's what I'm talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. So we think of the barriers, and let's talk about eliminating those barriers, and then we'll be a lot closer to figuring out what we ought to be doing and how to do it. So, the children will be embarrassed. I think that's the message. You tell us, look, if there's something going on in your life, you don't have to be embarrassed talking to us about anything. Feel free, be honest. We want you to be honest, even if it's going to disappoint us. Okay, that's another barrier, right? Kids don't want to disappoint their parents. So that's another barrier to remove, right? You tell your children, look, if something's going on, we want you to be comfortable talking to us. And by the way, they're going to test you. You can be sure, if they do decide to tell you something, you can almost be sure that whatever they're telling you, that's not what they really want to say. They're going to test you with a little trial balloon and see how you handle it, in all likelihood. I'm not a prophet, I'm not a Navi, but that's the way the kids roll. Usually that's what happens. They'll test you with something small and see how you're going to handle that. Okay? The children are afraid of being punished. So I think the only way you remove that barrier is you say, look, if you tell us something on your own, we're not going to punish you for it. We'll talk about it, but we're not going to do a typical punishment if you came and fessed up on your own and said that you're drinking or smoking or doing other things that are dangerous or inappropriate or against our tradition. So that's a discussion parents should have. And really think of those barriers, go along the way, and just try to remove them. One of the barriers that we talked about was that the kids might think that we don't get it. And that's a pretty legitimate one, right? If we don't understand what's really going on in their lives, the risk reward for them, it won't encourage them to talk to us, because they're going to go through the humiliation of telling you something and you really don't understand what they're saying because you don't know enough about their lives. And that's why I think, I always say that if you have, if you're empty nesting, which is, Baruch Hashem, thank God, our stage in life, you could be clueless. You don't have to find out what the latest apps are or what's going on with the children and really what's going on in their lives. But if you do, if you have teenagers at home, boy, you really need to know what's going on. And the confidentiality issue is a very big one, and it's delicate. It's not a simple thing. I think the best practice is to tell your children that unless somebody's life is in danger, don't give them a blanket, that we will never tell. I think it's good to say that unless someone's life is in danger, we will respect your confidentiality unless you tell us otherwise, unless we have a discussion and you tell us that it's okay to talk about this. I'll tell you something interesting that my wife Uri and I, when our children were getting, to the adolescent phase, we realized that the kids might be comfortable only talking to one of us. So we actually sat down with the kids and we told our children, and we told them that we say, Mommy, that we don't keep secrets from each other, but if you tell us and you ask us not to tell our spouse, if you tell one of us, if you tell me, or they tell Uri, my wife, and they say, don't tell Tom, don't tell Dad, or don't tell Mommy about it, if they tell me, we promise you that we're going to honor your confidentiality and we won't tell. And we really didn't. We really, really didn't. And there were things over the years that they were more comfortable talking to Uri about, and there were different things they were comfortable talking to me about. There was a certain pattern to it. But, usually things that were more, that you needed a stronger stomach to listen to, they were more comfortable talking to me about. My wife is amazing in terms of relationships and all of that. So those types of things, a lot of those other issues, they were more comfortable talking to her about. So that's something that couples should, talk it through and decide what you want to do. But the big idea is that, again, if we're going to get to a place where we're able to have our children have uncomfortable conversations with us, and that's for everything. It's for every facet of adolescence. It's for that parent whose child told him that he doesn't believe, he's not sure that he believes completely in God or what they're teaching him in yeshiva, or kids struggling with an addiction, or they find out that other things are going on. Any one of these things requires, if we want to be in a position to guide our children, there really is no other way to do this. The only way you could do it is by having your children talk to you. It's interesting, Rav Shimon Schwab, the Rav in Washington Heights, in the German Kehillah, the Yekische Kehillah there, I had the great privilege, the schus of teaching several of his grandchildren. And at one of the bar mitzvah of one of his grandchildren, in reference to a longer discussion, he said, he asked, when is the first time that you find the word friend? Re'a is a term for a friend. When's the first time you find the word friend in the Torah? And he answered that it was by the story of Yehuda and Tamar. So the backstory was that Yehuda, long story, but Yehuda basically confided. He had an uncomfortable thing that he had to deal with, and he confided in someone. And it says that he gave his certain items in the hands, biyad re'ehu ha'adulami, his friend, this friend, that was his friend. Schwab says a friend is someone you can tell anything to. And it doesn't mean that we should be friends with our kids, but we should have that attribute that they could talk to us. Parenthetically, my humble addition to that is that it wasn't from his family, folks, right? The Re'ehu that he was comfortable talking to was not from his family, which is why it's a huge barrier. Let's not kid ourselves. That's why it's a huge barrier, because it's more difficult to talk to, it's more difficult to talk to parents about things like this. So understand that there really are great reasons why children won't do it. I believe you can overcome it. I believe it's something that can be worked on with honesty, with integrity, by speaking to your children openly, by telling them that, this is something they can talk to you about any time. And like I said, they're going to test you, but I believe that it will, ultimately, you'll be able to pull it off. But they're going to test you. If anybody wants to type in a quick question, I'll be glad to take a few. If not, I'll wish you all good night. And there are some other things related, issues that are tangential but related to the notion of child safety. I think there are other skill sets that we need. Perhaps I'll use my page to notify you if I'm doing another class or two. You can email any questions that you have about this issue regarding child abuse prevention to ryh@thebrightbeginnings.com, ryh@thebrightbeginnings, plural.com. Now wait another moment or two if anybody has any questions, that you'd like to post, and if not, we'll just say goodnight. Okay, so I did post a number of things on this page. I posted about some other parenting issues related to that, and I posted 3 clips from this weekly series that it's bi-weekly. We're doing a 2-week series right now on mentoring your child, which is exactly what we're talking about. You can look at those clips, and if you find them thought-provoking, head over to Bright Beginnings Forum, where the rest of our parenting classes are. But we're doing throughout the year. We're doing under a minute parenting clips. Every Thursday night I do like a review, expounding on the subject, getting to it in greater detail, things that I don't have time to cover in a regular class in the 59 seconds. So feel free to follow, feel free to get engaged in this subject. One of my favorite psukim, one of my favorite verses in Tanakh, in Chumash and Navi, in our body of the Torah, Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, he says, Ani Bina, I am wisdom, speaking metaphorically. Ani Bina, I am wisdom, Li Gevura, I have strength. Ani Bina, I am wisdom, Li Gevura. Therefore, I have strength. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite psukim because it really discusses a truism. It's so true. Here's the way to think about it. We respond worst. We're at our worst in terms of parenting when we don't feel that we have the tools. Okay? In other words, we're weakest as parents when we don't feel equipped or self-confident that we're able to answer the question, or we're able to deal with whatever's coming. Then we start lashing out, and it's very logical. Okay, if you feel not empowered and you feel that you're dealing with a situation that's just over your pay grade, so then you're going to, you're not going to feel very comfortable, and you'll start lashing out in ways that are usually not productive. Whereas if you understand, what's going on and you have the tools and you feel qualified and equipped to deal with stuff, you'll be a much better parent in all likelihood. That's why I need being a ligavura. That's why I do these classes. That's why I do those parenting classes, because wisdom is power. And the more you learn about parenting, the more you study. We're starting again this Sunday. We're studying adolescence. That's a big deal. It's probably going to be at least 4 to 6 months. Daily clips on various facets of adolescence. So, get on board. You'll learn so much, and you'll hopefully, and really change the way you parent. One of the parents posted a question about what to do if a child, God forbid, was molested. So, I encourage parents, first of all, just go online and just Google signs that a child was molested. So that's always, something to keep in your mind to at least know what that looks like. Generally speaking, al regalachas, in a nutshell, the signs that a child has been abused usually are, we notice an immediate and rapid change in their behavior. They suddenly have fears that they never had before. They talk about not wanting to go to certain places or be with certain people. And, at the time, we're busy with our day. Sometimes, it just doesn't click. But in retrospect, it's something that we notice. Bedwetting, bouts of anger. Again, it's mostly when you see a steady decline, it's usually not trauma-based. It could be any one of so many different things. When you see, God forbid, you just see a drop, something happened. There's something there that's going on. So that's really what to look for. If you suspect that a child of yours, God forbid, was abused, please only go to a credentialed mental health professional who's licensed mental health professional, specializes in treating child abuse. Please don't go to well-meaning people like me. I studied child safety education so I can do these classes. I'd like to think, I studied thankfully, I'm honest enough to know what I don't know, and I studied at the feet of great people like Dr. David Pelkowitz and Dr. Tversky, who mentored me when I was starting to speak about child abuse and child abuse prevention. But I'm not the person. I don't know. I should not be treating an abuse victim. Only credentialed professionals. And the advantage of another advantage of going to a credentialed professional is that if the abuse allegations are legitimate or something to be concerned about, they're mandated reporters. They're obligated to go to the police and report them to the authorities. So that's what I would recommend that to do if you feel a child was abused, and tell the children, tell your child that we love you. We're always going to be in your corner. We're going to stand with you, whatever it takes. It's a big deal, of course, but like everything else, you do what you can by getting the right resources. Okay, we're going to stop here. Again, I'm going to reflect a bit. I'll take some questions again. It's ryh@thebrightbeginnings.com. I'll look over some feedback from you folks who were listening, and if there is a topic or two that I'd like to address on this subject, I'll notify you by this Instagram page. Thank you for listening. I really hope you found it helpful. And my bottom message is feel empowered. Feel empowered to be able to take your relationship to your children to the next level and be able to have elements of mentoring there where the children can talk to you about anything, where they can confide in you, where they can seek your guidance. Again, it's a prerequisite almost for all areas of child abuse prevention. Okay, good luck. And I give you, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you mazel and bracha and nachas from your kids. Be well, everyone.